We're good? Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky from Illinois, thank you for appearing on the UpTake. You'll be speaking on a panel at 10:30 about what and what excites you at Netroots this year?
Well, this is about the fight for the middle class that's going on at the state level, and I'm going to really be reporting on our battle at the national level as well.
Yeah, I mean, this really is an opportunity for Democrats. The labor struggle that we saw in Wisconsin and fights at the state level throughout the Midwest, though perhaps not in Illinois.
Well, this is really a prairie fire that's spreading from Wisconsin, gone to Iowa and Indiana and Ohio and Michigan. And I think that it is not going to be put out. I think that this is putting a face on who these middle-class public employees are. And everybody looks at them and says, hey, I know that person. That's my cousin Jenny, or that's my brother-in-law, and I know they're not making too much money. People get it, I think, that the middle class is under siege and that the policies of this country are making that happen.
We know that organized labor is a base behind the Democratic Party, yet there weren't a lot of high-profile Democratic politicians in Wisconsin, in Madison, rallying. How can and should the Democratic Party, harness this movement or take this movement?
Well, we have to embrace it fully. The Tea Party, when it reared its ugly head, the Republicans embraced it all the way. And I think that we need to even more explicitly embrace what's going on in the states. This is not only the base of the Democratic Party, but it's the labor movement that made the middle class, plain and simple. And I think that, that's exactly where we need to be as we go forward, a populist, progressive economic message.
What kind of steps need to be taken in the national discourse for that to happen?
Well, I've tried to pose alternatives. I was on the President's Commission on Fiscal Responsibility. I offered an alternative to Simpson-Bowles that says, yes, we actually can cut the deficit, but we don't have to do it on the backs of middle-class people or those who aspire to it, like the Bowles-Simpson proposal and the Ryan Republican proposal, even worse, has done. That if we raise revenues, we can on millionaires and billionaires, if we cut the defense budget significantly, if we take away those tax breaks that nobody even really notices, there's over $1 trillion every year in tax breaks, mostly going to the wealthiest Americans and corporations, then of course we can deal with the deficit. But I don't think the deficit actually is the worst problem. I think the disparity in income that is growing in this country, which is bad not only for our economy, but our democracy, is even more serious.
You mentioned an interesting point, the defense budget, and how it's ballooned out of control. Traditionally, one could say that the Democratic and Republican establishments, have shied away from cutting defense, or at least being perceived as cutting defense. Yet we're seeing some Democrats and some Republicans as well, some libertarians perhaps, who are advocating cutting defense. Is that a growing movement?
When you've got Tom Coburn and you've got Secretary of State of Defense Gates saying that we have to cut the defense budget, we know it's bloated. This is one of the only agency right now in government that cannot pass an audit. And we haven't been able to audit the Pentagon for decades, really, because there is just so much waste and so little accountability. And so we could easily cut. My proposal cut $110 billion from the Pentagon, and that's without doing anything to hurt the active duty people, people in uniform and their benefits, or the retirees and their benefits. These are wasteful systems. This is too many of our troops posted around the world, and we could easily do that without affecting our national security or our troops.
So is this more about eliminating outdated weapons that we never used against the Russians, say, or is it also about perhaps closing down bases in Germany or the Pacific that we haven't used since 1945?
It is about closing down bases as well, bringing some of our troops home. There's a lot of whining about how the NATO countries don't take care of themselves. I think it is time for, I'm saying that you hear politicians say that, and yet one way to deal with it is to bring some of our troops home, yes.
What are the other big issues on your plate that you're fighting for?
Well, I do have my Fairness in Taxation Act, which creates new tax brackets for starting at $1 million, ratcheting up to $1 billion, 45% for $1 million, 49% for people who make $1 billion in 1 year. There are people in America who make $1 billion in 1 year, and in fact, my tax brackets are pretty reasonable, even lower than under the Reagan administration's top tax brackets, but it would bring in significant dollars that would not have us do things like end Medicare. And, you know, the Republicans now are trying to censor the mailings of members to our constituents. They don't want us to use the term end Medicare. They want us to say change Medicare. But in my view, their proposal, which completely privatizes it, they can call it anything they want, sort of care, maybe care, I don't care, whatever they call it. But it's not Medicare with its guaranteed benefits any longer. And yesterday, they voted to cut the Women and Infants and Children program, the WIC program, a nutrition program. This is where they want to save money. It's immoral. And it's not even that much money to do that. It's so mean-spirited and cynical, I can't get over it. So we can do this by raising more money from people who can afford to pay. When they talk about shared sacrifice, and the Republicans do, that's ridiculous, because the middle class has been seeing a loss of income over the last many years, and so we're not starting it at evenly. We're looking at huge wealth that's gone to the already wealthy in our country. That's who ought to step up and pay more. Then the other thing I think on the jobs front, we need to put people to work, hire people. You know, I think there's so much infrastructure that needs to be fixed in our country. Schools, roads, bridges, underground with water and sewer systems that are crumbling everywhere. We could hire people. They become taxpayers. It decreases the debt to GDP ratio. It's good for everyone. And, you know, somehow there's a reluctance to say, oh, well, public sector jobs mean nothing. Since when? We ought to just hire people, create jobs, and I think it would help dig us out of this hole for real.
One hears the perspective or the opinion that the Republicans are committing political suicide on Medicare and Medicaid right now in the House, perhaps analogous to the way not all Americans, or not enough Americans were ready for health care reform.
Here's the difference, big difference. It's much easier to demonize something that has not happened than to try and take away something people already have. People know and love Medicare. They are benefiting from Medicare. It's been for, you know, since 1965 we've had Medicare. That is much more difficult and much more dangerous to say we're going to take away something that you already have. And I don't know that the Republicans get that difference. And then when they say, well, you know, you don't have to worry unless you're 55 years or younger, which to me is a signal. If you're 55 years or younger, look out. Even they're admitting this is not a good plan. And so no wonder there's a rebellion around the country, and that people go home to their town meetings and are hearing from their constituents, which is a really good thing. I think this year, 2011, this summer of 2011, is analogous to their 2009 summer, where they chased us around at town meetings yelling about Obamacare. And I think that we're actually in a better position because Medicare is, I believe, a third rail in politics.
A position to take back the House in 2012, or is that ambitious?
Oh, I think we can do it. You know, this race that we won in upstate New York, first we said it was the drive for 25 seats. Now it's 24. But Kathy Hochul won on the Medicare and really on other aspects of the Ryan budget in a district that is the 9th most Republican district in the country. Yes. She replaced someone who won, a right-wing Republican who won with 75% of the vote. So I think we can take that to districts all over the country and take back the House.
Finally, in light of online communication and the internet, taking down some dictators in the Middle East this past winter. Any words for Netroots, for the conference, for bloggers and online activists?
You know, what I actually think is that what happened in the Arab Spring in some ways did inspire what we saw in Wisconsin and around the country, that we also, as Americans, with the kind of democracy we have, we really don't have to put up with that, and we don't have to worry about the same kind of repercussions. We're not risking our lives when we take to the streets, so I would say to the Netroots conference, take to the streets.
Thank you for appearing on the UpTake. My pleasure.
Joining us here at Netroots.
Well, thanks, Mike. Great to be on.